Hello everyone and welcome to this comprehensive Django crash course. We will learn how to build powerful web applications from complete scratch. This tutorial is targeted for complete beginners to Django, and I'll do my best to explain every part in detail. But I will not bore you with any introduction to the Django, like what it does and all that, because chances are that if you are watching this video, then you already have an idea of what Django is used for. But if you want more information, you can always visit djangoprojects.com for any information that you want on Django. So let us get started. Let us start by creating a virtual environment. Of course, you can also install it on your default Python, but it is recommended that you do so. You create a virtual environment for the Django project so that we can install the Python libraries that are only specific to the project. You can see that I'm in a folder here on Windows, and you can right click. If you have the new Windows terminal installed, you can right click and then open in terminal. We'll open the terminal in this particular folder for you. But if you don't have it installed also, you can also open the CMD or the PowerShell from the start. You can search for it and then open it and then CD into this directory, or there's a shortcut. You can also click here in this address bar and then type CMD, and then the command prompt will also open in this directory. If you're on Linux or Mac, you can also there should be a way for you to open the terminal in the particular directory where you are. But I prefer using the Windows terminal, so I'll get back to that one. It is set up to Git bash also. And then this is how we create a virtual environment. If you are using the command prompt, then you are on Windows, you can type Python -m, and then we follow it with venv, and then now comes the name of the virtual environment, which I'll call VERT. But if you are on Linux or Mac, you may have to say Python 3 to specify the version, but this one will work for me because I am on Windows. It may take a while, but it will create it very soon. It has created a virtual environment, so if I minimize this terminal, you should see that this folder here, VIRT is created for us, and that is our virtual environment. The next thing to do is to activate this virtual environment, which if you are on Windows, you can do dots, and if you are using the command prompt, you have to use this backslash, but if you are using the git bash like I'm doing, you have to use the /. So if you're on Windows, you can, or let me type that one, or you are using the command prompt, you can do the /, and then the name of the virtual environment, which in our case is virt, and then script with the S capitalized, and then activate. This will activate the command prompt for you, the virtual environment for you if you're on Windows and you are using the command prompt. And the reason why we are typing this address, here I try to explain everything for you. So inside the VERT, there's this script folder and then this activate file. And that is what activates the virtual environment for us. So that is what we are trying to do. We are accessing that activate file. But as I said, because I am here, I have to type it like, I'll type it on a Linux machine. So I'll say source. So if you're on Linux, this will work for you, source, and then I type in the name of the virtual environment, which is virt / the same part again, and then I type activate. Oh, I didn't bring the T, so activate. And I know that it is activated because the name of the virtual environment will be here in this bracket. So let me clear, it is there. And then now that we have our virtual environment created, what we can do now is to install the Django. So pip install, then Django. Again, if you are learners on Mac, you may have to do pip3 install. Now we can give it some time to install very soon. Okay, so it has successfully installed. Let me clear also so that I get more space so that you also can see. Now we have to create the Django project. Think of the Django project or the project as the website. The project is actually the website or the web app you are creating. And that is how Django calls it. If you want to create a new project, the command is this. Now that we have Django installed, we say Django admin, Django-admin, and then start project. After this, we give the project name. So the project name for this one will be hello. And then I can press enter. This has also created a project for us. In fact, if I do ls, you see that apart from the virtual environment, we also have a directory called hello. So what we want to do now is to cd into that hello directory. And then now we are inside hello. And we can start the development here. The editor of choice will be Visual Studio Code for this anything Django. At least for now, it will be Visual Studio Code. If you don't have it, you can log on to code.visualstudio.com. You can have it there and then download. You can also use any editor of your choice as long as you know your way around it. So if I want to open Visual Studio Code in this hello directory, I'll just type code and then dots, and that should open up Visual Studio Code for me in that directory. Okay, Visual Studio Code has opened, and this is the welcome screen that we had. I'll show you how to do some configurations very soon, but let us explore the structure first, and let me allow the editor to fully load. You can see from here that we have hello, and then there's also a file called manage.py. Let me explain what each of them does, and then we take it from there. The hello folder that we opened also has this hello, another hello folder, which also represents the project. So the project's name is hello. And in here we find some files that pertain to the project. But this manage.py file is the command line utility that is used to interact with the Django project. It provides various management commands to perform tasks such as running the server, executing database migrations, and so much more. And so we will not touch this file, we will not touch it, but we will use it a lot. And then inside the project folder, we see this underscore init, which is an empty file that indicates or tells Python that the project directory should be treated as a Python package. And there is this asgi.py, which is also ASGI, I think, stands for Asynchronous Server Gateway Interface, and it is used to provide entry points for handling asynchronous web requests, and that will not be a matter of interest, at least in this series, because we are just learning Django fresh. And this settings.py is also another important file that I'll be visiting a lot, because here is where we find the project settings and all the configurations such as database settings, the installed apps and static files and templates, a whole lot of things. All the settings of the application is found in here, or we do them in here. And then there's also the urls.py, which also define the project's URL routing. So all the URLs that the website will have, the configurations will be done here. So if there's anybody visits any part of your website, this this is where it will come first, and then the URL will know what to do, go and look for what to do and all that. So you get to know what I'm saying very soon. There is also the WSGI, which is similar to the ASGI, but this is a web server gateway interface. They are all used for providing interface between Django and the server, whether local or hosted. So that is enough for what the files do. And so I've been talking about the server. The server is what will, of course, serve our website. I know I typed a lot of commands, especially at the terminal. So if you also like it, there's this PDF file I've compiled, contains the snippets that I just used. So I'll show you where to get this PDF very soon. Just stay in touch. If we want to see the website, we can run the development server, and this is the command that we use. We say python manage.py and then run server. And this is calling the manage.py file that we just saw earlier, and then using it to run the development server. Okay, so we have some information here with some warning that we can ignore for now, but we can also see that it says starting development server at HTTP localhost port 8000. So we can control click on this, and then it will open it up for us in our browser. If we see this welcome screen, that it means that Django has been installed successfully. That is the message we even see here. And so we can go back and then change tab. For now, I will let the development server be off by pressing Ctrl and C because I'm going to change some stuff here. I told you also, okay, you can also see that when we started the server, a database file has been created here. We will get to explore it more when we get to databases. I told you that the URL, they all come here. So what we just saw rendered on the website is this default one is Django made it that if there is no URLs that we have configured, if we have no files or HTML files to render, that is, if the installation is very fresh and we have not configured any URLs, then this page should display. And it even says it here that you have not configured any URL. So let's configure a URL and see what the URL will give to us. And so inside this URL.py, what we'll do is we will import what we call the HTTP response and use it. So from Django.urls, oh no, .http, sorry, we want to import HTTP response, this one. And this is how Django works. There's the URL that tells, okay, that is the request that is coming from the browser, like the address that the person will type. And when the path comes in, the path has what we call a view. And it is the view that is the view is just a Python function that describes the information that or determines the information that will be displayed on that particular URL or on that particular page. If it is confusing, don't worry, just let's follow along and I'll try to explain it practically. So let me create a function here that I'll call hello. And then in Django, whenever we create views, or which are also Python functions, this request argument is always there, like it should always be there. And here we can return an HTTP response of, say, hello world. So it should be an H1, which says hello world. And then this is the view, but we also need the path. And the path that we want this view to render on is the home page. So here we will come and add another path. This admin path, we will explore it later. And then this path is just the home page, the path that has no slash. So if the name of our website is codebase.com, then this is what it will represent. Codebase.com is this. But if we are looking for, say, codebase.com / maybe account, then this one will be account. So this will render, or if you just put account here, it will render to this, assuming the default homepage URL is Codebase. But if we put just an empty string here, it will render to the default or to the home page. And that is where we want to render. And inside this path here, what we do first is the routes. And then we also declare what we call the view. So here we can just call hello. And then we also give a name to the URL, which we will know how to go about later. We know why we need it. It's very helpful. So we can call it home also. And then when we save this file, come back and start our development server again. We don't have any errors. And then we refresh this home page. You see that it will change to hello world, exactly what we rendered here with the HTTP response. So let us go ahead and create another page or another view for greeting. So here we can just say greet. Let's call it greet. And declare the path for the greet also. Here the path will be /greet. Oh no, greet, just greet. And then here we will also want to render the greet view, and then the name will also be greet. This is it. And so if we come back, it's our server is still running. So we can come back here and do / and then greet. When we do that, it's also rendering hello world because I didn't change the thing here. So let me just say hello user, just so that we see the difference. So if I didn't save the file, if I come back here, refresh it, I think our server is running. Yes, and then it says hello user. But if I come to the home page, it says hello world. If I come back here, it says hello user. So that is it for it. So this one here, this URL here came in, and then Django took it to the urls.py file, looking for the path that matches it. And when it found the path that matched it, it looked at the particular view that it has to render, or the function that it has to render, went into the function, looked at what the return value is, and then showed it on the web page. And that is how it works. But you have seen that if we are, let's say you are building a very large application with lots of routes, declaring all of them here will not be a very best practice. In fact, it's at a point to be difficult to manage. And then Django has a way around this one, that they divide a project into apps. You can divide your project into apps, where an app is a portion, just a portion of the whole project. Like you can see it as a self-contained model that looks at a specific functionality of the web application, and it's also a way to organize the code base and make it easier to maintain. And let's say you are creating a blogging application or a blog application. You can have the following apps. The project will be blocked, but we can have apps for the account, which will take care of the registration of users, and then there are other details like that. And you can also have the blog app itself, which will take care of the title, the content, and all the other things that you have to add to your blog. So we can also structure this project into apps to help us. And so let's see how that one too goes. We have to break out of the server. Let me clear. And then if you want to create an app, this is the syntax that you use. We also use the manage.py file again, Python, manage.py, and then we say start app. And then the app name follows. So let's call this app base. And then it has been created. If we come back to editor, you see that it's there, the folder is there, base. Okay. It also comes with its own files. Let me try and then go through them. This migrations folder is for databases, so we'll get to it very soon. And the init.py again is to tell Python that it can treat this base app as a Python package. And this admin.py is the file used to register models. The models have to do with databases. So we'll get there very soon. You can see that it says register your models here. And also the apps.py is the file that contains the configuration for the app. You see that there is the base config, the configuration of the app there. And there's also models.py, which we use to define our apps data models for the database. We'll get to it when we get to databases. We see how we can use it. And then the test.py file is for writing tests for our application. For now, we will skip that. And then there's the views.py, which is where we define the views. That is the functions or classes that tells us how we want information to be displayed on a particular page or route. But the first thing that you do after you create any app in Django is to come to the project's settings.py. So in this case, my project is hello, and there's a settings.py. You see the installed apps, and then you add the name of the app to it. So the name of the app is base. You can add it this way to work, but it is recommended that you add it base.apps, the base.apps.py file that we just saw there. And then we go into it and then call this class, which is base config. So base.the-apps.base config. And that's it. We have registered it. So Django now knows this app. And then because we want to now break down our URL, like we even want that place to be free, the main urls.py file of the application, that is the one that is in settings.py, to be very free. So we'll move all these things into the base app. So I can just cut it here, come in here to the views, and then paste them here in the base. And then of course I have to import the HTTP response from Django.http import HTTP response. And then in here you can see that these ones are not found, so I'll cut them for now. We need them somewhere, and then I can delete this import. But if we still want the URL to be active on the application, because we now have the views in the base.py file, the URLs will also be in the base.py app. And so we have to add the URLs from the base app to the main project, and we do that by typing it this way. And in here we have to import the include, which will help us to include the URLs from an app and add it to the main settings, main projects URL. So, and we see that any URL that has to do with the landing page or the home page, that is the one that does not have any slash, like codebase.com, then we want to include, and then we say base.urls. And when we do it this way, Python will immediately know to go and fetch the URLs file in base and add it to the URL of the application. And you can see that this file that we have referenced is actually not in the base.url. It doesn't come default when you create the app, so we have to create it ourselves by creating a new Python file called urls.py. In here, we have to import path from django.url. So from django.urls, we want to import path. Okay. And then we declare a list called URL patterns. That is how it is done. And then in here, we can paste the path that we copied from the main application's url.py. And then because we need a views also to, you can see that VS Code is telling me that it cannot find this one. So we have to import the views.py file also here so that you can have access to the functions. So from .import views. And then in here, we can just reference it as views.hello, and here to be views.greet. And then we can save this. I know we have done a lot of changes here, but the summary of it all is that we break the project down into apps so that we can easily maintain it. And then when we create an app, we register it with the project by adding it to the installed apps in settings.py. And then when we can create our urls.py and then include it inside the project url.py file. And then we can create our views in the app, declare our views, call them in the apps url.py file, and then declare the path for those views. So now if we start our server, and visit this same page again, it should not throw an error. We should be able to visit. In fact, let's just change this view here to hello Django for the home page, and then hello codebase family, just to know that they work. Here, if I refresh, I see hello Django. If I go to /greet, I see hello codebase family. So it is still working as we expect it to do. And Django can do more than returning just an HTTP response. In fact, we can do all the web development stuff here. Let me just add a class here, or a style, an HTML style, or a CSS style, sorry, an inline styling. And then I can say, let the color, this code should be single now. Let the color be red, and I will save it. I'll come to the home page here, and when I refresh it, I see that the color is actually red. So yes, we can apply the styling also here. Okay, Django can do more than return just this HTTP response. We can actually return full HTML files. So in the next episode, we see how we can return an HTML file with Django. All right, so if you want to render an HTML page in Django, call it template. So I'll collapse this one so that it will not confuse us for now. And then inside the app, you can, of course, there are more than one ways to do this, but starting this, I think this way of doing it that I'm about to show you should just suffice for us who are now starting. So we create a folder called templates, and that is where we store our HTML files. Django calls them templates. And in there, we can create a new file, say home or index. People usually call it index. You can call it anything HTML. And then I can just hit the exclamation mark and I get this template for me. So here I can now return my h1, which was saying hello world. Let me say hello world again so that you just know that it is rendering it. And we can save it here. And in the views.py file where we want to return the HTML, we will now get rid of this HTTP response. And then you see this render up here is what we use to render the page. So return and render, and then we pass in request. This request will be using a lot. And then in here, after the request, we type in the name of the template. You can see here that VS Code is IntelliSense is telling me template name. So the name of the template is called hello.html, which should be the same as the name that you type here in the templates.py templates directory. And Django knows that it will look for the template here from this templates directory, so it should be there. The template directory should be there before, and the name of the file too should be the same as the one you put here. There are other parameters we can pass, but for now let's just focus on this one. So if we come here and refresh the page, it says template does not exist. This is our first error here that we have. If we have an error like this, this is the page that we show. I think this error is just due to the server. I think we can break the server and then start it again, and everything should work fine. Okay, so now the server has started again. Let's just refresh the page. And it's still saying template error. Probably I misspelled the name. Hello. Oh, it's supposed to be home.html. So I did not practice what I preached. I just did not type the correct name. But so you saw what happened when the name was not correct. You make sure that your template name is correct. So now it renders says hello world again. And we saw that we can add our styling, the inline styling. We can add it here and it will still work. So as a style. And then color, and this time around, let's choose blue. You save it, come here, and then it will work. But if you have some idea of web development, you know that this inline styling thing is not really the best, because it's not the best. It's not the best, at least. So we have to create a different file, like a CSS file, that we will call in here. And then based on the classes or the HTML element, we apply the styles to the web page. So in the next episode, I'll show you how to include what you call the static files. That is how Django calls them, the HTML files, the JavaScript files, and the images, call them static files. How to include it in your project and configure it. Okay, so if you want to add static files like the CSS file to your project, just like we added a template using the HTML, you have to create a new folder here called static. Going forward, I'll show you another way to do this, which is a little advanced and recommended, but for the purposes of this introduction, this method should suffice. And inside here, you can create the name of the static file, which I will also say is home.css, just so that it matches with the name of my HTML file. And then in here, I'll apply some styling. So I'm targeting all H1s, and I will want to give them a color of blue, and then also a font size. Increase the font size of say 80 pixels. I'll save it, and in traditional HTML, this is how we do it. We come here and then link it, and if we were writing this in traditional HTML, what we would have done is like you just say // and then we look for the static, and then here we will look for home.css. But if we do it this way, it will not work. Let me delete this inline styling. It will not work. When we refresh the page, it will go back to black and it will not come back to blue again, even though we have said it here that it should be blue and very big. In Django, we configure the static files differently. You have to type this syntax here that says load static, so that it will load all the static files into your HTML template. And again, it will be able to load the static files, and it will do so only from a folder called static in your app. Or another way that we can show, we can put the static files all at one place for the whole project and link it. And so that is what Django will do. In fact, if I should introduce you to a little to what I'm saying, if you look inside the settings.py, see that the static URL is static, and we can actually declare what we call static file DES, or static short for static file directories, and then we give all the directories that contain our static files for the project, and so that Django can also look at those places also. But for now, for the purposes of this introduction, just putting it in the app in a folder called static should suffice and shouldn't bring so much confusion. So now that we do it this way, it will still not work, even though we have, I think this one, it will still not work. If we want to load it here, we have to once again bring this once, and then we say static, and then inside the string, we can now mention or type in the name of the static file that we want to render. In our case, is home.css, and this should do the trick. Let me do a hot reload. Okay, let me in most cases, when it happens this way, you just have to restart the server. It happens a lot. It was saying here that it was not finding the home.css, says 404 not found. But if we do a hot reload now, after restarting the server, so that everything comes again, our hello world again is blue and big. So that is how to add static files like CSS or JavaScript to our projects. Now that we know how to do this, let us look at how we can also render some pages. So in the next episode, we look at how to build a simple greeting page to greet people, so to speak. So jump into the next section and let's look at how we do that. Okay, so what we have to do is to come into our view, and then this greet function is what will do the trick for us. Again, we don't need this HTTP response, so render. We want to, and then request as always. Now we want to render a template called greet.html. We have not yet created this file, so we'll go ahead and create it. But I have prepared a file in advance for this tutorial, which you can find There will be a link in the description to this GitHub page where you can find the intro to Django greeting card. These are the files we'll be using, the grid.css and the grid.html. So just head over to the directory, the GitHub repo, and then just download that one also. After you download it, you have access to these two files which you can copy. Now let me paste it in the template. So you know that the CSS file is obviously not supposed to be here. It's supposed to be in the static. But if you are wondering, this one is just a greeting card that I built in Tailwind CSS. It's just this simple card. What we will do now is that the name will render a new name every time we click on the click me button. Yeah, that is what we desire to do. So let's go back into our grid.html, and here let's load static. And then let's refer it to it properly. So static, and then in here we want to get the grid.css. I think I can close the side panel for yes. Let's see whether our server was still running. This one might cause a problem. Let's just break out of it and run it again. Okay, so let's just make sure that everything works again. And then here we can go /grids. And then we see that it has rendered successfully. That's great. When we click it, nothing happens. But let's just add the logic such that when we click it, it will actually render this for us. So we're now back inside our views.py file. What I will do here is to import random. And then here where there's the grid, I have some names here that will want to randomly show. So I'll go ahead and paste them. These ones were generated randomly and in a resemblance to actual persons, or it's a pure coincidence. And so here we can get an index which will be random.randint. We want a random integer so that anytime that it runs, the view is called, a random number will be returned, and then the name here that we want will be names, and then at that particular index. So what this one will do is that it will return a new name every time we hit this view. And apart from just the templates that we render, we can pass what we call the context dictionary. Here we can pass in data that we want to send from this view to the web page. So the data can come from the database, which we'll look at very soon, or you can also do it here in this very simple manner. But most of the times it comes from the database. And here in key value pairs, so I can just say name, and then the value of it will be name. This name here, the key is the name that you pass to the template. So what the template will use is this one, and then it will refer to this. So it's just like the way Python dictionaries work. So the values of this one, the value of this one, in case randomly it gets to Olivia Taylor, then this one will render as Olivia Taylor. That is when the template actually calls for it. Okay, so here now we can go into our templates where we return the data, and then let me clear this default one that was there. Inside to of this bracket, we can include what we now want to render on the page, which is name. So Django allows us just to plug in the variables just like this, straightforward. So this one will be fetched from this, which will also refer to any name that will be randomly returned from our list of names. So let us add a link here that will go to greet. And then here we can say go to greet page. Here, this is the URL we want to visit, but once again, this is not how we do it in Django. It will not work like what we do in the plain HTML. Here, we are calling the name that we assign to this path or this URL or this route. And then we can call it in any Django template here. And then Django will automatically know that it has to visit this URL. So that is the advantage of having this name here in our URLs or in our path. And once again, if I want to, I will have to bring this and just say URL, and then the particular URL I want to visit, which is the greet. So when you save it now, come back to our home page, refresh, you see that there's a link here that says go to greet page, and you click on it, we get the greet page, and even see that Isabella Moore has been rendered. When I click this one, a new one has been rendered, and so it will just be rendering a new name every time we click on it. So that is how we also pass data from the view to the HTML file directly. Now let's see, now we see that we are rendering it from a list here. Now let's see how we can do that from the database. I'll stop the development server for now. And then before we access the database, let's create what is called a super user. You know, Django provides an administration interface that we can use for administrative purposes. Let me collapse some of these. If you come to the settings.py file, the URL, you see that there is an admin. That is the link or the path to the administration interface. Let me close all these ones that we are not using. And this one. And so we can access the admin interface by what is called the super user. You have to be a super user before. We create that one by Python manage.py create super user. Okay. This is the punishment for the error that we ignored. See, this error was always popping up that we have unapplied migrations. So let's do the migrations before we can create the super user, because it creates the user in the database and it cannot find the database tables. The database is there, but there are no tables for where to create the super user. So first, let me clear. And then Python, this is how we make the database migrations. Let me show you what it means. You see this migrations file, init.py. There's only init.py that is here. After we make the migrations, we'll visit it and see what has happened to it. So Python manage.py make migrations. Okay, the app, let me see. It didn't. Or we have to migrate. Okay, then let's run another command, Python manage.py migrate. And then see that all these migrations have now been applied. We can come back and see. Let me see. Okay, because that one is default for the project, it will not show here. It is the migrations that we do for the app that we show in this migrations.py. You see some very soon. So now we can go ahead and create a super user. without encountering any error. So it's asking me, so I'll go for code base. And the email address, so mail at codebase.com. It's not a valid mail. And then it's asking for the password. And then oh, I made a mistake in the password, so password is too short, must contain at least 8 characters. Yeah, for now I will accept and then use anyway, but let me follow the best practices. Why is it telling me that the passwords do not match? So these are some of the checks that Django does. I don't know why it is doing though, but it's trying, because this is just development. I was just trying to put some simple password, but it's telling me to make it a little complex. So let me now go ahead and then this one there should pick it. Okay, now super user has been created successfully. And then once the super user is created, it can run the development server. And next time around, we, instead of greet, we go to admin. Now be welcomed with this interface. This is not me, it's code base. And then the password is autocomplete. And so this is the Django admin interface. I'm using a dark mode here, so that is why things are like this. Here we can perform administrative tasks for our project. So for now, we don't really see anything. The users, if you come to the users, because we are, I am a super user, I see that I am here, code base, I'm a user, I have a staff status. But there are no other things here. There are no groups. We talk about groups probably in some later tutorials. So let's go back. Let's close the server for now. And then go back and then declare some models in here. This is how we declare models, database models. So it's a class, Python class, and I'll call it name. And then it should inherit from models.model here. And then in here, we type the name of the field. You know, if you are familiar with databases, the column name, that is what we are typing here. So it should just be a name field, which will be called to models.char field. We are just, which is also for character field. And then in here, we can specify the max length of, say, 50. So the maximum input should be 50. The character field is just to say that it's a character field, like a Python string, you can say so. There are other things that we can do to this class, but I'll keep it simple like this for now, and I'll tell you so that you understand why I did what I did. So after you create a model, the next thing is to register it in the admin.py. You see it says register your model here. So we have to import it. So from .models, not .migrations, .models, import name. And then we go like admin.site.register. We want to register name. So when we do it this way, the model has been registered, and now we can run migrations to push it or create the database table for the model. So let's go Python manage.py make migrations, and then it's that it's found the migrations for base migration 001 and then initial.py. And so when we come to this place, you see that that file has been created 001 initial.py, which is we don't have to worry about this. This is what will be used to create the database table for us, and then to be created in this database. See that the ID field was added automatically here for us. If you don't touch this file. So after that, what we have to do is to python manage.py now migrate. And then it will migrate into the database for us. So now we can run our development server once more and see what has happened on our admin interface. Now if we go ahead and then refresh this interface, you see that base has been added here, and then the app name and then the database table. So names in here. So that there are 0 names in here. We can go ahead and then add a name. I'll go ahead and then copy from this place. So if I add Davis here, and then paste it in, and then save. You see that it didn't. This one is not really useful. If I add another name here, like a Wilson, so that it's telling me name object 1, name object 2. It's not really good. Like if I want to really identify it, it will be difficult. So inside the models.py, if you want to prevent that style of naming, you have to define this __ str, which tells Django that this is how it should name your how it should. This one tells Django how it should display the name of the entries that you make. So that instead of just giving it name object, it should give it a very descriptive name. And here we pass in self because a class, and we say return self.name. So we can save this file now. Come here, refresh, and then now it's not name object, rather it's the name that appears for us to see. So I'll go ahead and quickly add the rest of the names and then see how we'll go from there. So I've added all the 10 names here. So let's go back and see how we can call for the names from the database and display it on the web page instead of having it hard-coded in our views.py file. So I'll go ahead and delete this one. In fact, I'll delete everything here. Okay, so now how do we get the file or the data from the database? We have to import the model here. So from .models, you have to import name. And then in here, we say names equal to, this is how we call. So name .objects.all. This is how we call for all of the objects from a particular database table, in our case the name. So this will bring out all objects. There's also specific ones like get, which we used to get some, maybe you get by ID or get by the particular name, but in our case we want to get all. And then the name here can be equal to a random.choice and then name. So it should get us one of those names from the names and still return it for us. So I'll save it here. You can see that the list is gone. Let's see, the development server has started again. But in this case, you come back to the home page and then go to the grid page. You see that James Smith has been rendered. Again, Isabella Moore and this one. This time around, we don't have the list hard-coded here. It is calling it from the database directly and returning a random one from the database. So that is how to create database and then link our views to the model and then call for data from the database onto our web page. in later tutorials or episodes, we look at how we can build pages to also add data to the database directly. It's not always that we can go to the admin.py to add files. In fact, because it is us or you are the super user, you can add the data there in the admin interface directly. But what if somebody is registering on your website? The person will have to provide their own name from a particular form, and then it will be transferred to the database. So we look at how to do that one for now. But this will be the end of this particular video for the introduction to Django, and I hope you've learned along the way. That will be all for this particular video. As I said, thank you very much for staying along, and I hope to see you in the next videos where we build real world applications. Bye for now.